Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. Have you thought about becoming a professional life coach? Let's talk about transformation and coach training. I attended Transformative Coaching Essentials, a one-year coach training program based in Sacramento, hosted by McLaren Coaching. This one-year intensive program is truly life-changing. If you've thought about starting a coaching business, becoming a better leader, improving relationships, or just want personal growth and change, then I recommend you talk to Cami McLaren about TCE. The next program starts on July 27th, 2024. Sign up now and mention this ad to get $250 off your tuition. Learn more at mclarencoaching.com/coach-training. That's McLaren, MCLAREN. Better yet, you can email Cami, that's CAMI, at mclarencoaching.com, or you can also contact me, and I'm happy to talk to you about my transformative experience with TCE and how it can change your life too. And welcome back for another exciting episode of Off the Comma and another really powerful story. And I'm really excited for this week's episode because I'm here with Reina Hosier. And Reina is a dear friend of mine. She's another newer friend, but I've known Reina now for about a year or longer. And she's not only important to me, she's important to someone who's important to me. And we may or may not find out about that in her story, because I don't know what she's going to be sharing with us today. But I'm so glad to have her here. Reina has been an important part of my journey over the past 6 months or so. And I've gotten to know a lot about her as a person and just gotten so much value out of her sharing her insight and her wisdom. So with that said, like I say every episode, I'm going to shut up now and hand it over to Reina. Reina, welcome to the podcast. Tell us, how would you like to be known and what would you like for folks to know about you?
Like you said, I'm Reina. I would describe myself as open, free-spirited, resilient, and loyal. I am a life coach, which is how we met. I'm currently living down in the desert near Palm Springs. And that's about it.
Okay. Well, you and I both know there's more to it, but let's let the story kind of crack it open, right? The intro and the getting to know each other is always kind of awkward. Like,
it's always hard to describe yourself, right? Like, at least for me.
That's very common, right? Like some folks do. Like, oh, I'm feeling really I'm feeling really informed about who I am today. And other times we got to kind of get ourselves warmed up. But once the conversation gets flowing, then I find that it's there. It's there, right? Good deal. Well, I'm excited to have you here. And as I already mentioned, I don't really know what story you're going to be sharing with us today. So I'm looking forward to that. And as we do with every episode, I'm going to be using the same 5 questions, and we'll get those questions underway in just a minute. But I always like to start, Reina, with this question, which is, as you think about the conversation ahead and what you're going to be sharing with us, what intention would you have for yourself here on this show today?
My intention would be to speak coherently, but also make a difference for someone. My life has been a series of commas, I feel. And I hope that there's something in today's story that will touch someone, validate someone, just let someone know that it's okay to be whoever you are.
Okay. That sounds really personal for you. I can hear feeling in what you're sharing. My intention is to support you in achieving that intention and also do part of what you've already talked about, right? Which is create the space for you to be able to share openly and in all of your glory with your story, and that when that story goes out into the world, it reaches people, and there will be those who hear it and they will connect with it. They'll see a little bit of themselves in that story, and they'll feel a little bit more connected, a little bit less alone, and in the best of cases, feel inspired and empowered to maybe do something a little more of better or differently for themselves that day or someone else. So I'm excited. Big breath. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's jump in with the first question. So, Reina, where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Well, like I said, I think my life has been a series of commas, and we could do a whole mini series on that. But when I was trying to think of the one to share here, I asked Jocelyn, my wife, and she said, "Well, which one was the biggest, or like what one really, like when you think about it, was a big one?" I am going to talk about leaving my husband. That was not done lightly. I was married for almost 15 years, and we had a good relationship, and it took a lot. It took a lot to make that decision, and I sat with it, struggled with it for probably almost 5 years before I actually did something about it. I think my husband and I were well suited for each other. I was older than him by about 8 years. So he was young when we got married. But I was older, and I had some conversations with him. I thought very smartly, getting to the bottom of the things that generally break up a marriage: politics, money, religion, children, right? Like, we had that conversation beforehand. I never wanted to have children, never wanted to have kids. I was very certain that I didn't want to have kids. And I wanted to share this story specifically because, like so many women, at least in my generation, it was just an expected thing that's what you do, right? Like, how could you not want that? Growing up, when I would speak that, I'd get all the same questions, like, or responses, I should say, like, well, you'll change your mind, or when you get married, it'll be different. What if your husband wants one, or kids, or however many. Anyway, and that's what happened, right? He wanted a kid. I didn't. We had a discussion about it, and I agreed to have one child for him, on the premise that he would be primary caregiver. I was very career oriented. I wanted to, rule the world, be CEO, like, be a big dog. And I know what it's like in corporate America for women. And I know that there's a shelf life for us. So it was really important to me to not take a break in any way, and just fill all those stereotypes.
It sounds like, if I may, for just a moment, it sounds like this God, even just saying this other path makes it feel like it's something kind of alternative, but it's really not. The path of fulfillment at work, CEO, being the boss was important to you. What was important about that path? What were the things that you were wanting for yourself in pursuing that path?
I wanted to be important, I think, first of all. I wanted to have the freedom, I think, that comes with the that level of career, right? You have more money, you have more time freedom. Well, okay, that's not necessarily true, but you get the freedom of making your own schedule. But like being important, I think was the top of the line. Having a voice, being heard, but also making a lot of money. I came from less than poor. I came from nothing, and I didn't want to ever experience that kind of scarcity again. So I was driven to be a bigwig in a way that would give me freedom, like, independence, a life that I loved. And, the things that I love are traveling and seeing the world and, just having the option to get on a plane and go somewhere new, and be it for work or pleasure. Like, that just sounded exciting to me.
Definitely, I see this theme of, as you've said, like freedom, the freedom from the limitations of the past. And correct me, anything that I reflect back or say back that's not accurate or doesn't land right, just correct me. But freedom from the limitations of the past, and this ability to kind of create and walk your own path. But also, I'm seeing a lot of being seen and recognized.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, just a little of a backstory about why this was important to me. I grew up in a Mexican household. I have 5 brothers and 2 sisters. Very traditional mother, in that, like, if you don't learn to cook, you won't find a husband, like, this is what women can and can't do, or girls, in my case, like, your whole existence is there to serve somebody, and I didn't want that life. I didn't think that it was a given. I didn't think that not having a penis made me less than. And it was kind of like proving that to myself and everybody,
Definitely a breaking out of the mold, breaking out of the norms, challenging those stereotypes and kind of like role and gender expectations.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm 52 years old, and definitely grew up in an era that was, sort of breaking free, but not there yet. I don't know that today's young women have that kind of messaging constantly, but it was more the norm in my generation.
Yeah. Okay. And so now we kind of have a better picture, a clearer picture of kind of who you are, where you're coming from, and your sense of identity. And now bring us back into the story. So you've agreed to have a child with your husband, and he's to be the caregiver.
And he's to be the caregiver so that I could focus on my career. And it didn't happen that way. I finished my bachelor's degree. It took me almost 12 years because I was working full time, going to school at night. And I had this window. I felt like I had this window of opportunity to pause, so to speak, and do this thing and then get back on track, kind of thing. Like I had just graduated. Now is the time to like change careers or do whatever. And I wanted that done or behind me, and if I were to start a new career path, then it would be full speed ahead kind of thing. So I was 30 at the time. My husband was 22. So we did the thing, right? Like I read all the books. I planned it out. I, in my normal way, decided when it would be the best timing wise and went full speed ahead with that. And the day that I told him that I was pregnant and he was not happy about it, I realized that I had made a mistake. I had this belief that there were two kinds of kids in this world, like the wanted ones and the not wanted ones. And I learned through that experience that there is a third category that I hadn't realized. So, and by that I mean like the ones that are wanted, but not for the kid itself, but for checking the box kind of thing. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. I did it. The end, right? Now I have an extension of me, or I've continued my line, or whatever it is. Like, there are all kinds of factors, I think. But there is this third category that I had no experience with. So we had a great relationship, him and I. He resented that child from day one. So we never saw eye to that. Obviously, he did not become the primary caregiver. I felt very betrayed and did all the things that I needed to do to make sure this kid didn't feel like he was neglected or cast off or unwanted. I did that. I have a really, really great relationship with my son. But what ended up happening was that although my husband and I were great, like we had a good relationship, we had good communication, we had fun together, blah, blah, blah. Whenever my son was in the room, there was tension. And as he grew older, it got worse and worse, to the point where it was really hard to be in the same room as them. They would fight. They would scream at each other. They would take turns like trying to say the meanest thing that you could think of. And mind you, I left my husband when my son was 10. So this is him being a very young child, having these fights with supposedly grown-ass man. And it just wasn't fair to him. It wasn't fair. He would be hurt. I could see it. Like, it was so stressful for him. And so I had a conversation with him, with my son, and I told him what my intention was, and he was relieved. And it was such a validation of my thought process. I told him I was going to leave his dad, and he was relieved. And I did.
Reina, so this is obviously a very intense and personal story for you. I'd love to ask the second question, and you can continue to kind of go back and forth between question 1 and 2. But with everything you've shared and this experience, what did it create for you? You've shared a little bit so far about what it created for your son, but what was happening for you as a result of sitting on this comma?
What I found was that I spent most of my time hiding in the bedroom. I'd go into a bedroom and I'd shut the door so that I wouldn't be in the same room with them. It was just so tense in the house that like I was hiding. I would go away. I would, bury myself in education or reading or at, any number of things alone. Like I would hide. And so what it did for me to make that decision was it gave me the freedom to move about my house like it was my house. Um, I got to choose how to spend my time or what I wanted to do with it. And it opened up for me possibilities around making my own choices. And that was big because freedom is important to me. And it created a space for my son to relax into. We had shared custody. He, would go back and forth, but it gave him a haven. Like he could do that thing because he knew he would come back and have a space to that where he was safe. So it was good for the both of us.
Can I reflect something? It's interesting because earlier you were sharing you didn't want to become a parent because your freedom, your choices, your autonomy, all of these things were so important to you. And now here you are, you've kind of come back to reclaiming that because once you had made this decision, you literally said, now I have the freedom to move about my house. I have my own choices. What's interesting and I'm curious about
Yeah.
is you did the thing that at first you didn't want to do. And now with the thing being now you're a mom, you have a child, and you were still able to find those things for yourself.
Yeah, it did affect my career in a big way. I had part of the decision or the factors, I guess, was like, how do I survive on half of what I was making before? Um, where is my career going now? Like I'm starting over from scratch because I did take time off. And so like all of those things that I was afraid of happening for myself career wise happened, right? Like it wasn't an unbased fear, it was relevant. And yet what was important to me about making the decision anyway was the things that you just said, like granting myself the freedom to make decisions or choose my own life, my own way. It was important to make the decision because to reclaim myself and my freedom, but also um, it was interesting because like I find that a lot of people who stay in unhappy relationships do it for the kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my decision to leave was for my kid, right? And it was a hard decision to make. It definitely impacted my future, my present, my all the plans that I had made.
Well, nothing,
But
nothing went as expected. Or I shouldn't say nothing, but things didn't go as expected. You originally didn't want to be a parent. You chose to be a parent because you had a partner who wanted to be a parent, was going to take the lead role. You become pregnant, and now that partner is not happy about being a parent, doesn't take the lead role. You take the lead role. There's just a lot of things that didn't go the way you had planned. And those plans were different than the
yeah,
plans that you originally wanted in the first place.
yeah. And I think that's where the resilience comes in because things don't go as planned. Almost never, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to pivot and be like, well, this is what so, and now what, right? Like, now what do I do? Or and to be able to like assess what's real, what's true, and then make new choices, make new decisions. Yeah, this was a setback for me, and I wouldn't change it because I did the hard thing for a good reason.
Mm. What do you mean when you say that?
Because although I did not want to have a child, like, I'm bringing all my baggage into that. I am firmly in the belief that if you do choose that path, then you have a responsibility to be a parent. And that sometimes means making hard decisions that you don't necessarily like or might be a sacrifice or whatever you want to say, but you just become, it's your responsibility to take on this task because you chose it in the best way possible for this helpless little being that you brought into the world, right? So you make a decision, you make a choice like that, then you stand up and take responsibility for what comes next. And it wasn't something that I'd wanted, but I made that choice. I wasn't coerced into it. It wasn't an accident. I decided that I would do this thing. And even though it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, or I thought it would, it was still a choice that I made. So it was my responsibility to do the things that needed doing so that he would be cared for.
I noticed earlier, I didn't want to interrupt your story, but when you were telling us about this experience and particularly what it created for you, it was very emotional for you. People can't see it, but I can see you on camera. What was the feeling? What were you experiencing as you were tearing up telling the story?
There's so much actually packed into that. A lifetime of trying to break out of a stereotype that I shoved myself into.
You shoved yourself into. It sounds like you weren't the one or the only one responsible for that. You described your family growing up in an environment of stereotypes.
Yeah, and then it ended up. If it felt like that, it ended up being all the things that I didn't want to be, right? Like I made a choice to do this thing, and it changed my life in all the ways that I was afraid it would by choosing that, right? Like going into it willingly, knowing that you're giving up your career or going to be a single mom, like that's one thing, but it felt a lot like betrayal because he didn't keep his word, one, but also because then I became the thing that I didn't want to be. And I thought in my agreement beforehand that I had found a way to have my cake and eat it too, like do both. I can do this thing and not give up any of the things that were important to me. And it didn't work out that way. And I think that the biggest hurt emotion thing was that I ended up being the stereotype,
That sounds really, it sounds heavy. I mean, this is clearly affecting you just retelling the story. Yeah. And you placed a lot of importance in not fitting that stereotype.
Yes, I did. But the key here, and the reason I wanted to tell the story, is that it's okay
to not want to fit the stereotype, to not want to fit the mold. It's okay to just go with your gut and be true to yourself. And if you find yourself in a spot where things didn't work out the way you expected them to, that you don't have to just accept that. You can make the choices, you can make the decisions, the hard things. You can do the hard things. You can get back up and start over. And it's all okay. Whatever you choose, however things work out, it's all okay.
Yeah. Well, and it's a good bridge into the next question, because I feel like you've already started answering that, and add whatever else you would like to it. The next question is, what did you learn about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma?
The biggest thing I learned is that I can do the hard things. It was a hard thing. It was a hard thing to face being a single parent. It was a hard thing to be like, what do I have to do to pay the mortgage at this point, right? Like, I've taken a cut in my salary. I am going from a 2-income household to a 1-income household. Like, there's a lot in that decision. And there are so many people in my position that aren't prepared to do what it takes to survive. And I am resilient. I am determined, and I am a survivor. And I can do the hard things.
Yeah. Well, you're also showing us, and anyone who's been through any type of experience that's even remotely similar to this, or any kind of a breakup or divorce, you're showing us that, sometimes people will say, oh, well, that doesn't look good. You need to break up with them, or you need to end that, or you need to divorce them. And it's about so much more than just making the decision to end a relationship. I mean, it is just so much more complex. Even if the decision itself is a simple one, people can say it's just that simple. It's never that simple, is it?
It's never simple. And like, being able to face what was wrong? He was a good guy. I thought you guys were so good together. He didn't beat you. Why the hell would you leave something like that? Like there is so much stigma around like making a decision like that, unless there's this clear, like, the acceptable reasons, right? Like, he was abusive, or he cheated, or he did, whatever. Like, without these clear things that you could be like, yeah, this is why it didn't work. There's a lot of like, why would you leave something like that?
Once again, this theme shows up in your life, right? And I think so many of us can relate to that, which is the external questions and approval and expectations and so forth are never really about what's important to you. It's always about what's important to them. Whether it's, a family who says you have to do this or be this way in order to accomplish these certain types of things. And that's how we live, to people saying, why would you leave that? It's all about them. It's all about in their head and what they would do. It's not focusing on you at all.
Yeah. The truth is that nobody gets to say what your decisions or why your decisions are right or wrong. Everybody brings their own point of view, their beliefs, or, whatever they think is right and wrong to the question. But ultimately, making the hard decisions sometimes means going against the flow, or, going against the rules that society has created for no apparent reason, right? Like sometimes it means being different, or standing out, or just thinking differently than everyone around you. But ultimately, it's your life and your choice and your right and wrong that you have to figure out. And it's not up to anybody else to decide what's the best thing for you or what's right for you.
Reina, what has changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma?
Well, I got to start over, create a new life, a new career. I got to create a relationship with my son that I don't think would have existed in the space of tension that was there before. I got to find someone who adores me and respects my who I am and what I want and don't want. And quite frankly, I didn't believe that that was going to be possible for me. So it was a surprise. And, without making that decision years and years ago, 11 years ago, I guess it's been maybe almost 12, it opened up the space to allow that in that wouldn't have otherwise been possible. And like I said, my current partner is a woman. We've been married, I guess, a little over 6 months now. Been together for some time before that, obviously, but it goes back to, and I guess I would say, like, you get the same, like, oh, I didn't know you were gay, or, all these things that people make assumptions about. And the thing is that it goes back to, you get to choose what's right for you, and you get to say what you want or don't want. And it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about your choices, because ultimately you're the one living it.
So I have an interesting question then, with a little bit of a lead up, because what I'm hearing from you as you tell your story is about your desires, your wants, your goals. And what I hear from you is very clearly it's centered around the things that are important to you. I'm not hearing definitions, containers, labels, systems of values, or whatever. So, for example, you are currently married to a woman, but I haven't heard you in your story saying, well, I grew up gay and ultimately I knew I was going to end up being with a woman. What I'm hearing you say is, and now I'm with a woman and you get to make your choices. So the question is, what brought you to this relationship? What makes this relationship matter to you?
Just what I said, in, like, I found someone who respects me, who values who I am, doesn't want me to be somebody else or fit into some box or stereotype or whatever. But more than that, I found someone who feels safe, right? Accepts who I am. Just like anybody, I think we have our arguments or whatever, differences of opinion, but ultimately, like, we're able to be like, okay, either, talk it out, like, what did you really mean by that? Or, this is who you are, and that's okay. So, like, just being allowed to freely and openly be yourself is a gift.
And it sounds like, because you continue to reinforce this message for yourself, through your story, I should say, and then also for folks who are listening, is you get to choose. You get to choose. I hear this over and over and over again. So it sounds like not only did you get to choose this relationship, but this relationship is reinforcing your choices. You're laughing. Tell me what's coming up.
Yeah, I was thinking that everything about the commas that I've experienced in my life have boiled down to, I get to choose. And that's important to me. I respect differences of opinion. I respect everything, all the various types of humanity. But nobody knows me like I know me. And I get to choose. Like, my life is what I make it. And I take responsibility for that. And with the responsibility comes like empowerment, like just power, right? Because I've made this life. I've made the choices that have gotten me here. Nobody forced me into anything. Things might happen the way, like, unexpectedly or not the way that you planned it. When you made a decision, one of the mantras that I live by is like, no regrets, because you make the best decision. You make the decisions that you make the best that you can with the information that you have at the time. And that is really key, because now thinking back, would I do things differently? Of course. But I didn't have this information when I made the choices that I made, when I made the decisions that I made, right? I had information and I made the best decision that I could with the information that I had. And sometimes it turns out not to be true, the information. And you get to make new choices and make new decisions and decide how you want to respond to that. A lot of times the information is half-baked or sometimes just outright untrue. But you don't know that. And you still have to move forward. You make choices and you make the decisions that keep you moving to where you want to be as the information comes to you or changes or, differs.
Yeah. Okay. So, Reina, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
I think getting off the comma is the point where you decide to move. Like, sitting on the comma feels like this is a point where I'm unhappy, or things didn't work out the way I wanted, or I don't know where to go from here. That's what that comma feels like to me. And then you evaluate, you get to like weigh the pros and cons, so to speak. But there comes a point, a pivotal moment when you're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm done with stewing and I'm ready to move. And when you make that decision, that's when things change. That's when you come back into your power and you get to design your own life, right? You get to be the architect.
Wow, that is wonderful. I so appreciate what you just shared, and I just so appreciate everyone's intensely personal interpretation and response to that question. And so all of your story is just so meaningful to me. And that in particular is like, I just love how you framed that and how you presented that. And it sounds like it's very meaningful for you. So, Reina, looking back on the conversation that we've just had, thank you so much for sharing your story. What would you now acknowledge yourself for?
Well, I acknowledge myself first and foremost for being someone who can do the hard thing. The resilience that comes from that. For the longest time, I would speak of being a survivor with some pride. And recently I had this shift in that I used to think of surviving as a positive thing. Like, being a survivor meant I'm strong, which I am, and I'm resilient, which I am, I'm determined, which I am. And I just felt like there was a lot of pride behind that statement. But recently, through the TCE life coaching training and stuff, and Jocelyn, I realized that I don't want to just survive. I want to thrive. And that is the next thing, right? And just like, so I acknowledge myself for being all of that.
but also being willing to look
Mm.
and make adjustments, being able to see, oh, like I thought this one thing before, but now I have a new perspective and I can change my mind, right? Like I can, it doesn't make that wrong. It just means I have a new perspective now and I can think of things differently. And that's great too.
Yeah. Well, and I think it also reinforces some of what you've already shared with us, right? Which is you do what you can with the information you have at the time. And it's what it comes up for me is that when you've just come out of surviving or a survival, that is something that you can be proud of, right? That was the accomplishment in the moment. And that once you've survived and you've gone on to your next thing, and maybe another thing has come up that you've survived, and that's another thing to be proud of. And so each of those survival moments is something to be proud of. And then you get to a point in your life where you look back at the collection of those survivals, and collectively they have a different meaning. And it's not that you didn't have a right to be proud of that and proud of being a survivor, but now that collection of survivals tells a little bit of a different story. And so there's something else in addition to be proud of. It's not just the survivals themselves, but how do they stitch together in the fabric of your overall story?
Yeah. Each one of those experiences teaches you something about yourself and shapes you in some way, right? I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm discovering things about myself that I didn't know to be true before each one, right? Like, or in the midst of that, or even at the point where I made that moment or to move off of the comma, right? Like all of those are informative of who I am. And either they validate or reinforce something that I know to be true about myself, or they teach me something new about me. And all together as a package, I am who I am because of those survivals, right? Like I am unafraid to take a risk or try new things or be completely unconventional or think what I think because I survived all these instances where I had to decide those things, you know? So it is very pivotal that they shape who you are.
Yeah. I so appreciate you sharing with us and so vulnerably. I believe this story is going to resonate with so many folks. It resonates with me. And I just honor your experience. And with that, I'd love to say or to ask, like, where can people find you if people want to contact you or look you up or follow you? We'll put the information in the show notes with the links, but where can people find you?
Well, the easiest place to go would be the website that is not up yet, but will be soon, hopefully, and that is leorising.life. That is my life coaching website, which I have with my wife because she's also a life coach. So that will be coming soon. Instagram, I'm Reina Hosier. Matter of fact, I'm Reina Hosier everywhere. I think I'm the only Reina Hosier on the planet. So if you Google it, you find me.
Nice. Okay, good. And we'll have that in the show notes too, so people can click it easily. Reina, one other thing that's important for me about the podcast is, we're obviously here to share stories and to share what's important about us. And so one of the things that I believe is an important part of your story and important to the podcast is lifting up others and giving voice to those who may not have a voice or may not have as much of a voice as they would like to have. And I call it acknowledgments. And so as you look on your circle in your life, who would you like to acknowledge? And that can be causes, organizations, creators, individuals, people in your life. Did you think about that? Who would you like to acknowledge?
Well, the organizations that I would like to acknowledge are Planned Parenthood, because as I said, choice is important to me. And being able as a woman to, have body autonomy and make the choices that you want or that are best for you is important. And and you don't have to have or get permission, or you shouldn't have to get permission from anyone else to do what you need to do to take care of yourself and your body. The second organization that I appreciate and support is Charity Water. They can be found at charitywater.org. One of the things that I appreciate about this company in particular is that they are providing clean water to the world, and easy access to clean water creates opportunity and possibility for women and girls. Absolutely. And if you look at their website, you can see statistics about how the clean water affects the time and the education and the freedom of women and girls in these areas that don't have access. And the second part is that 100% of whatever you contribute to them goes to creating water. They do a whole separate kind of fundraising thing for administrative overhead, bullshit stuff that has to happen in order to run an organization. But what you donate goes to the water.
And I'm guessing, I haven't checked them out yet, but I certainly will be. I'm guessing this isn't a scheme to bottle and sell it back to them either. So.
No, they dig wells. They have, when I first looked into them, they were digging wells. They might have much bigger, better technology now that they're providing. But their 100% focus is finding parts of the world that are without water, clean water, and making it accessible.
Okay, nice. Reina, thank you so much for sharing this and these acknowledgments and sharing your story with us today. And I'm so glad you were here with me today. And obviously, you and I will continue to have conversations on an ongoing basis. And just so grateful to you. And we'll look forward to seeing you maybe in a couple of months down the road to do a check-in as well.
Okay. Nice. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was fun.
Have a great week.
You too.
What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma, and feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.